Usually when I do these milestone episodes, I try to make something fun and positive, but this time I want to talk about something that has genuinely concerned me for a while. When skimming through YouTube, especially if most of what you search for and watch are pop culture related, you often see videos with thumbnails reacting angrily to something in the entertainment world. They often have some photoshopped image of a well-known figure like Kathleen Kennedy or Brie Larson, to name a few examples, and big red letters calling them failures or how everyone hates them or something. I won't mention these channels, so not to publicize them, but you probably already know what I'm talking about. These are basically rage bait channels that thrive off people clicking on these thumbnails to hear what they have to say about these entertainment figures or the media they create, often very negatively. And what I find disappointing is the influence these channels have on people, resulting in others just repeating what they say. There seems to be a whole industry of these channels that find something or someone they want to target and make them a whole thing. I mentioned Brie Larson earlier, and she's someone who's gotten so much undeserved hate from these channels. Why do they hate her so much? Part of it comes from a speech she gave at an awards function talking about the need for diversity in film criticism. That was then spun into a whole thing where she somehow hates white men, even though that was not at all what she was talking about. Larson was mainly talking about how it's good to hear perspectives from various people who might respond to a film differently based on their own cultural background. I think it's great we're in a media landscape where that is more possible than it was 20 more years ago. And people got so angry at her for it, which also led to unverified and likely false rumors that the rest of the Marvel cast hates her, most of which are said and repeated by these YouTube channels I'm talking about. And then people watch these videos and then use them as sources and repeat them even if the likelihood of them being true is low. Kathleen Kennedy is another person these channels are against, mainly because she is the current head of Lucasfilm and seems to be blamed for anything people don't like about current Star Wars productions, while anything they like is because of someone else behind the scenes. After the South Park Joining the Pandaverse special was released on Paramount+, I noticed a bunch of videos pop up about her reaction to it. The thumbnails and video titles basically said things like Kennedy responds angrily to South Park special, or Disney retaliates against South Park. However, when I go search what she said about the special, or if Disney's going to do something about it, I find nothing. No articles, no quotes from them, nothing. It seems they've largely ignored the special. South Park has been mocking Disney for years, most famously with a violent version of Mickey Mouse, and Disney has not responded once, as they likely recognize it is a satirical show and everyone in Hollywood is probably aware at this point that anyone is a potential target. The Simpsons and Family Guy have similarly made several episodes that take potshots of them, and again the Walt Disney Company has largely ignored those jokes. And yes, I recognize the irony there. Yet you see these thumbnails with fake images of a crying Kathleen Kennedy. Of course, I'm not saying you cannot criticize the corporate decisions made by executives and that you have to agree with the creative choices made. I've frequently criticized David Slazov's decision-making at Warner Brothers the past few years, and I've given negative reviews to a bunch of films that underwhelm me. But I do it by calmly explaining my stance, and I also hope that anyone who watches a video of mine can come to their own conclusions. It is incredibly obvious when someone is just repeating what they hear in these rage bait videos. Rachel Zegler is someone else who these channels have gone after recently. She is now supposedly the most evil person in Hollywood, who everyone apparently hates, and people are going to boycott her movies, turning her into box office poison. I guess the people who paid to see the new Hunger Games movie did not get that memo. I did a video a few months ago about the upcoming Snow White movie she's starring in, which has been the subject of a lot of these videos from rage-bait YouTube channels, and something I've wondered is how many people clicked on that expecting a similar sort of video from me, only to have me not have an angry reaction to a movie that's still over a year away from release, and of which I've seen zero footage of. Sorry that the next Disney remake is not making my blood boil. Sorry that none of the Disney remakes have made my blood boil. Something I wonder is what joy do they even get out of making these types of videos? There was someone who worked for a popular movie-related YouTube channel who then found themselves in scandal and was fired. They started a new channel, initially about movies, but then morphed into just gossiping and ranting about celebrities. Is that something they genuinely enjoy doing, or is it just for the views? Of course, YouTube is a free platform anyone can post on, and you're free to upload whatever you like as long as it does not break the community guidelines. Not that YouTube is always that great at monitoring who breaks them. My main concern, as I said, is the negative influence this can have on people who watch these videos and start thinking this is the right way to look at media, and that hating actresses they never met for some random comment in an interview is perfectly normal behavior. These channels do foster certain media illiteracy, as they often lash out and get angry at the most ridiculous things, and others copy this. I talked about this in my video about the political themes in animated Disney movies, but one of the latest is declaring something woke for having a certain type of character in a major or even minor role, or because of a certain political message. Woke just now seems to be used by some people to say, I don't like this. There was a video game reaction that went viral not too long ago, where someone was angrily ranting about a video game asking for pronouns and blaming it on California for some reason. What was he so angry about? I remember playing computer games as a child that would start by asking if you wanted to play as a boy or girl. Your gender has long been a requirement on any passport. Many of us will laugh at these explosive video reactions, but there are also plenty who watch these and think, he's right, even when it's complete nonsense, and then spread that sort of thing around. This leads to the media literacy I mentioned earlier, for example, complaining about a franchise suddenly shoving political themes in your face, even when it's always done that. Star Wars is often used as an example of this, but the one I find especially perplexing is Star Trek. Modern Star Trek productions tend to draw complaints from these sorts of channels and those who watch them for being so focused on political themes. This ignores that Star Trek has been heavy on political themes and pushing diversity from the very beginning. Gene Roddenberry made it a requirement for the Enterprise to have a diverse crew on the bridge, wanting to present a message of racial equality having been achieved in the future. He also made it clear to the writing staff that every episode should contain his philosophical and political views, and base the future depicted in Star Trek on his own ideas of how society should be. But these channels don't mention this so as not to clash with the narrative they're presenting of Hollywood only recently exploring and discussing these concepts in movies and television shows. Another example is how Barbie was decreed by these YouTube channels as some man-hating manifesto, which is a complete misinterpretation of that movie. Barbie is not an anti-man movie at all, but rather a film that advocates for equality of the sexes. She-Hulk has also been called anti-man, even though many of the most beloved characters among the show's fanbase are men. I've been mainly talking about things that are frankly not that serious in the grand scheme of things, but this sort of rhetoric about media then morphs into even worse lines of thought, and that is what really concerns me. A recent survey revealed that 20% of young adults in the United States believe the Holocaust never happened. That is a shocking statistic. If they simply were not aware of the Holocaust, that's something you can chalk up to the failures of the educational system. But so many young people thinking the Holocaust is a myth is something else entirely. This is something they're taught, with surveys revealing that many who believe this sort of misinformation are likely to have learned it from platforms like YouTube and TikTok. And when people participate in Holocaust denialism, they will often show signs of anti-Semitism. Nobody is born immediately hating certain groups of people. Prejudice against black people or gay people or Jewish people is something people get from family, friends, teachers, books, and yes, the internet. When someone hears these sorts of horrible remarks about a particular group, they might reject them and decide this is not a person worth listening to anymore. Or they fall down the rabbit hole and continue down that same path and repeat these sorts of things to others. Media can unfortunately have that kind of influence. The Ku Klux Klan had been largely dormant for decades before D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation was released and caused it to return. There were people who saw that movie, liked how the Klan was portrayed, and revived it as an avenue to spread the hateful agenda. Even the famous cross burnings were something the revived Klan took from Birth of a Nation, as this was a concept that originated from the film's source material. Back to the internet has been used to do great things, like help us to become more educated in certain topics and to connect us all. But it's also led to poisonous ideologies being more freely distributed, and these can unfortunately influence those who hear them and think this is the right train of thought. All of us have a responsibility to see what is obviously nonsense and figure out for ourselves what messages and ideologies we want to send to others. So I want to end off by recommending 3 films worth watching that highlight what I'm talking about, all of which happen to be about World War II, but remain relevant to today's times. The first is a Disney cartoon titled Reason and Emotion. Released in 1943, it's about the necessity of not letting others manipulate our emotions and take away our reasonable thinking. The second is Jojo Rabbit, Taika Waititi's satirical comedy from a few years ago. Told from the point of view of a 10-year-old boy who idolizes Hitler and blindly believes the Nazi propaganda that has long been foisted on him, the movie depicts the dangerous influence that certain people can have on young minds. Throughout the film, he then learns more about how bogus the Nazi ideology is and why Hitler is not someone to look up to. Many of us know that what Hitler was saying about Jews and other groups was horrible and based on his own prejudiced views. But unfortunately, there are several in Germany who hung on to his every word and allowed his power to grow and corrupt so many. The third movie is Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator, specifically the final speech, when the Jewish barber ends up trading places with the titular dictator Adonai Henkel. In that speech, he tells the viewer not to be taken in by those who seek to take away our humanity and replace it with hatred for other human beings. It's a stirring speech that has not lost any of its power, importance, and relevance since Chaplin first spoke those words. I know this is a more serious topic than I usually talk about, but I really am greatly concerned about the influence and manipulation that certain YouTube channels, TikTok influencers, and Twitter users have on other people, especially those still trying to figure out their place in the world. I assure you, these rage-bait channels and others who rant these poisonous thoughts and unleash them out into the world, trying to manipulate anyone who comes across them, do not have your best interest at heart. And it makes me sad when I see people repeat them, especially when they are much better and more level-headed voices you can listen to. Thank you for watching, and if there's someone you know you think should listen to what I said, please share this with them. See you next time.